Thanks, Sally. Hello, welcome. I'm Aleesha Callahan, and together with David Constantine, we host a podcast called Creative or Dead. And in it, we deep dive into the creative process. And you might be thinking we're not in a podcast studio today. And no, that's because we're doing a live recording, which is the first we've ever done. So congratulations on, being part of this inaugural excitement. Creative Mornings is, as I'm sure many of you know, a global initiative, and it's an incredible opportunity to kickstart your day with like-minded people and be inspired by amazing speakers sharing their stories and insights. Today we're united by a theme of Crossroads, which we'll come to, but the guest speaker today, you guys are in for a treat, and I'm going to hand over to David to give a little intro.
Thanks, Aleesha. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all. Familiar faces and new ones. So yes, I mean, we've heard a little bit already this morning about Joe, but Joe is a life designer, and we will pick into those choices of words in a little bit as well, I'm sure. Joe's been doing coaching in various forms for over 30 years. And I guess relevant to the people in this room, Joe has worked at least for the last 15 years with a number of really prominent Australian creatives, using her skills and her experience and her coaching to help them unlock their creative potential and to make serious inroads and impact in the ways that they want on the world. So we are very privileged to have Jo with us and to talk a little bit about herself and also what she does. So we'll jump straight in because we have a limited time this morning. Jo, welcome.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe the relationship that you have with creativity as well?
Okay, so where do I start? I'm going to hook it onto Crossroads. So I started off in fashion, as some people may know. So that was my other life. Actually, I'll go back a little bit further. I was at RMIT and I did media studies, and thought I'd be probably working in advertising or as a journalist. I did media studies instead of journalism because my dad wanted me to do journalism, and I wanted to be the creative different. And I was given the opportunity to come and work at Just Jeans, where I'd worked when I was at college, at high school, as their fashion coordinator and assistant to the advertising manager. And I thought, okay, so this is probably what I'd end up doing after a course. So I jumped ship from the course. That's probably one thing I regret. So it's a crossroads. I stood there with a decision to be made, and made it on a really limited criteria. So there's a job. It's for a company I knew. I liked the company. So I started in fashion that way. So I'd worked as a salesperson, got into working for Just Jeans, and decided actually this is what I like. I'm quite good at this. And so in a sense, it was a dumb decision that I made to leave a course, but in hindsight it shaped the rest of my life. So the next probably major crossroad for me was being in fashion, built up a business, had a label, had 4 shops, 20 staff, factories, 11 factories where English was not the first language. Very good at what I did, and then fell pregnant and realised I could not sustain life as I wanted if I stayed in the industry, because I was a workaholic, and that's not the kind of human I wanted to be. So it was a really, really major time in my life, and I was also doing a lot of personal development and professional development, and was introduced to the work of a guy called Buckminster Fuller, and had some sort of really big epiphanies and thought, oh, my life actually means a lot more than fashion and what I can dress people in. I think I've got a bigger purpose on the planet, which sounds really, really like weird, probably.
Not at all.
Yeah, but there was a saying. One of his quotes was, "You do not belong to you; you belong to the universe," and that really hit home for me. Whether it's because I'm a sky pilot and I'm very interested in, that sort of thinking. I'm not a fluff person. I don't really like having shallow conversations. So that was a depth that I really related to. And so I started to think, what else could I do? And another one of Bucky's playbooks was your purpose in universe is to gather information and solve problems. And I love solving problems. So that was a turning point for me. He sort of made his life a demonstration of what can one person do to change the course of humanity. It sounds so weird saying this out loud, but that's what really, really inspired me. And I thought, well, I'm just one little person, but I do have a lot of life experience and I do have stuff that I know, and it's probably worth sharing with people. And the weird and wacky thing is, the first thing I started to share was how to get organised in a business, because I'd been a designer and a manufacturer, and I knew how to have a vision, but also how to bring it to life.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I picked up while you were talking there seemed to be a synergy between the business of business and the business of being creative. Was that something that seemed self-evident to you, or was it something you were intentional about?
The business of business. I think just really early, I'm very organised, as we were talking previously. I'm a disciplined and organised person, and I realised that in all of the worlds I'd inhabited, creative worlds, there wasn't a lot of discipline, and people weren't so intentional about their creativity. So I realised that getting organised and having process and being aware of your process is really important. So, yeah. And I love business. I actually love business. And I had, around the same time of doing all these courses I was doing, I was learning about my relationship to money, my beliefs around money. I came in contact with a lot of really creative people who were struggling financially. So, yeah, it made sense to sort of apply what I was learning and try and help people.
Absolutely. And as you're working with I guess for this audience, your creative clients more specifically, although we'll talk about creativity being universal in a second, but those who work professionally in creative spheres, I guess, is that something that has just continued to have relevance, teaching them to have agency with the financial side and what it empowers them to do?
Oh my God, yeah. I think that probably one of the most common pains that I experience with people is that they have really great brains, they're really creative thinkers, they're good problem solvers, and they have a skill set. So they come out of uni, you're really talented, but there's not, if you're going to make money out of your talent, if you're going to commercialise your creativity, you have to have some kind of business acumen. And so like really early in the piece, and the courses that I was doing was around how to build businesses, how to market, how to just purpose-driven businesses. So I was really lucky. I was doing great courses that were about how to make a difference in the world, a positive difference in the world. So everybody I encountered lacked some form of discipline around organisation. So whether it was their processes, their systems, or money, they didn't know how to monetize things, or how to manage money, or how to grow a business. And so, yeah, I started off recommending, and I still recommend this book. It's called The E-Myth. But thanks to Jack Lippold, she introduced me to like the contemporary version of it, which is called Run Studio Run. Is it Jack? Yes, so Run Studio Run by Eli Altman. So I suppose the message is, when I meet people, they have great skills. They don't always have great business skills. So it really is an essential skill set to add to your already amazing talent.
You've just mentioned a few books, but, what other tools or practical kind of tips do you give your clients on this sort of financial literacy?
First, to invest in their financial literacy, to get a good team, to make sure you have good advice. And a lot of people have accountants that are just bean crunchers, that you may as well just give them zero, and that you may as well do your own tax return. So getting a handholder, getting a person who's in the business of nurturing businesses, and there are really good people around, that's an essential. Whether you're a solo operator, like a freelancer or a sole trader, or an organisation or a business, and you've built a team, I think it's really important that you have a financial plan, you have some end point that you're working to. Because often also that's another issue that I encounter a lot. People create a job for themselves instead of a business. And so if you think about, do you want to be in that job in 5 years' time? And if you build a business and you build a team, often the job you end up having is not creative anymore. It is HR, it is financial and admin. And I'm seeing all their heads nod. It's the common pain is you don't get to do the fun bit very often if you're going to monetize your creativity. So it's really important to say, do I want this to be my income generating activity, or do I want it to be my hobby? Do I want to keep it sacred? Because you can have both, but have your eyes open. If you're going to monetize or commercialize your creativity in some way, you are going to have to be immersed and sometimes slimed by admin and HR and financial matters. So have a plan. Go in with your eyes open. The E-Myth is great because it actually says your business is not your life. It's there to help you create a life, and it forces you to think about the life that you want. And that's something I do with my clients. I make them go to the end of their life. I admit it.
Can you elaborate on?
Well, one of the exercises, it's in Serious Life Play, it's Farewell Yourself in Serious Life Play, but I've been asking people to go to their own funeral, or if they feel weird about dying, to go and chat with their 104-year-old self for as long as I can remember. So, because it's the ultimate end game, and I really think that just like everything you do should have an end game, a clear end game in your mind. So this morning, we'd like to think everybody walks away with something that they can apply in their life. So there's an outcome. So the biggest end game is death. So if you can go to your death and look, and then imagine what you want it to look, sound and feel like, and think about what kinds of adventures you want to have, what kinds of regrets you don't want to have, then you can come back to now and start designing that life. So there are other elements to the design phase, getting to know yourself really well, understanding your decision-making process, understanding what matters to you most, what are your values, what do you believe? And one of the things that I deal with lots of people that I work with is what are their beliefs around money? And the struggling artist, that whole stereotype, that old chestnut, the cliche of if you're creative, you can't make money or you can't be successful in that way, is one of the big belief chunks that we work on.
Changing the attitude of being a sellout or something.
Yeah. You would not believe how many people sit down and say, look, I'm not driven by money. And I think, well, could you be a little bit driven by money? I am not, for me, my belief around money is freedom, money is health, money is ease, money is choice. It's a form of energy. We get money by exchanging our gifts with others. We get money by saving other people pain, time, energy. So I have a really healthy relationship with money. I had to learn that. I had to go and study money to get healthy relationship with it because I didn't grow up with it.
Yeah. To pivot back to something at the start of this money conversation, but maybe take us in a slightly different direction, you talked about that idea of people having to reconcile, for want of a better term, professional creativity or professional output, commercial output, and self-expression. And I mean, I know it's true of a lot of different areas, and people often have something that they'll self-define, but it feels like a particularly unique or at least specific crossover in the creative fields where people have had that creativity that's innate, fostered and praised and patted. We've talked about the kind of the pat on the head and the developmental stuff in this podcast before. So then it becomes self-defining in a way. So is that something that you see come up regularly, this idea of a disconnect or a tension between what I do professionally and how I express myself as a creative person?
What I experience more so is when people are burnt out by running their professional practice and are missing being a creative, being free to be creative, because there's definitely a different energy around self-directed creativity and responding to a brief. So my recommendation is that every creative, whether you commercialise your creativity or not, does personal projects. And my experience is personal projects always lead to professional projects, so a commercial outcome. And I can say that is true in all cases for the people I've met. So when they're stuck or they're feeling like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore because the slime of being in the business of creativity is all over them, I usually say, you need to do a personal project and you need to post about that post. You need to let people know about your personal projects, because that's when you get to be free as a creative, and you don't have somebody else's brief, you have your own brief or no brief. So I hope that's answered the question. Yeah.
You've mentioned that a lot of clients come to you when they're at a personal crossroads. So how does that play out? How do you kind of work with people to help them get good decision processes and work through a personal or a professional crossroad?
Okay, so yeah, this is a really common on the registration form when people come to work with me. They often say, I'm at a career crossroads, or which I just take. Crossroads is a junction of choice. So it's a position in life where you are faced with choice. And if you're faced with choice, you're faced with change. And so my job really is to step into that person's world, understand what they're telling me as their beliefs and their values, and what are their obstacles, and then what are their choices. And then we explore all of that. So usually people will come and they can very clearly tell me what the choices are. Something stopping them from making that choice. So if it's career crossroads can be, I actually don't want to do this anymore. I'm thinking of totally changing my career. Or it could be I'm a founder and I'm essential to my business and I want to start a family, things like that. So I'm actually known as the baby whisperer because I've helped so many female founders actually, get their heads around that you can start a family, and it means changes in your business. So the crossroads require decision-making processes, self-awareness about how do you make decisions, what's your criteria for weighing up options, weighing up choices. And so that's a lot of my work, helping people to understand what matters to them, because it's a really weird thing, but most people don't know. If I say to somebody, what do you want? They will usually tell me what they don't want. So by contrast.
That classic chestnut.
Yeah, that classic chestnut.
Something that comes up a lot when we talk to guests on the podcast is flow state, and getting into flow state. How do you access that kind of magical place where everything just feels right in the world? I would love to know, do you have any kind of rituals or things that you do in your life that help you get there, or advice that you pass on to people?
Great question. Yes. So my own rituals are quite a quirky person when I think about the rituals, but I do have, I have wind down rituals. I think I'm going to zoom out from me and say most people will have achieved flow state at some time in their life. And so it will be different for every person. So I call it the architecture of flow is going to be different for you, because NLP, my training, is about the architecture of thinking. So you need to check back into when you have achieved flow. And you need to look at what was the context, what were the circumstances for you to be able to create that flow state. So if, for me, if I'm cooking, I have to have a clean space. So it's part of my ritual creation of flow space. It's a state of mind. So any state of mind will require whatever it takes for you to step into that state. I make myself a cup of tea. I meditate. So I might do a 5-minute meditation if I know I've got something that I just want to be totally present to. So I have little rituals. I set myself up in a particular way. But each of those things that I do is because that's what I remember works for me to get into a flow state. Often I will do massive mind maps and brain dumps to get everything out of my head, and then I will go for a walk. So internally, I know my process requires space. So brain dump, then space. Every person I've worked with has a different architecture. But it's really important, if you ever want to access any mental state, you need to reflect on a time when you have had that. So whether it's confidence, or confidence is a great one, and I work a lot with people on their confidence. And it comes down to remember another time when you were confident. That's a state that has structure. We need to overlay it onto this circumstance. So think about, how did you achieve it? Was it you had your lucky undies on? Did you, and I am forever saying to people, do you have lucky undies? I have my wedding ring. I have a ritual of touching my wedding ring because it's a really special experience. It anchors me to a very, very happy time in my life when I felt really, really confident. And it's called an anchor. So I anchor myself to a happy time, and then I can feel confident. It's the way the brain works. You're sort of directing your brain in the way you want it to work. So flow, achieve it your own way, but be conscious about achieving it.
Definitely taking some notes down.
Good.
Oh, we're back.
Yes.
So I would love to know some sort of inspirations and what you're a very broad reader. You read a lot, all different subjects from astrophysics,
Neuroscience.
Yeah. What inspirations can you share? Things you draw on.
I just read a lot. I actually read, like you say, vastly. And on my website, I've got a tab that says Good Reads, and I try to keep that up to date because I read books and I'm totally absorbed. I consume books, and that'll be everything I'm thinking about at the time. And then I'm on to the next book and I think, well, that was amazing. And I try and tell as many people as I can about the amazing book I'm reading. And then I move on to the next one, and then I'm telling about that one. But I suppose some of the most profound books are The Artist's Way. I loved, because it's for recovering creatives. I love that it was posed as a 12-step program. And I'm a nerd. I do the exercises in books, so I loved it. I do the exercises. I've done them over time, a number of times. And I find that that's almost like a therapeutic intervention, that book, to help people realise that everything you do is creative. And that you can recover if you're feeling stuck. So The Artist's Way. And I absolutely adore a book called Into the Magic Shop by a neuroscientist, James Doty. And he talks about how he learned how to meditate as a child and how to manifest. And manifesting sort of it's coming up again, the word manifesting. 30 years ago, I was into reading about spirituality and manifesting, all sorts of things. So it's just having its renaissance. But he has the neuroscience around manifesting, and that's probably what I love. I love that there's magic, but I love that there's explanations and there's science around it as well, because it's good fun when you're talking to people who you just align with and you can just talk spiritual babble. But then when you hit the person that goes, I don't believe in that stuff, it's great to be able to refer to the science. It's like, being able to cover all audiences. So they're 2 books. But yeah, definitely check out the Goodreads, because every book that's on the list I have adored. There's a book I read as a 14-year-old, which was called How Real is Real, which is so relevant for now. And it was pretty much about propaganda. So it's I think you can still get it, but it's a very, very, very old book.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad how a return to all the learning out of the last major global conflict has regained relevance. But we won't go down that path. One more book to put on the list then, which I'd love you to talk about, because when we were preparing for today, the statement I walked away from that conversation with most burningly was when you said, what you do, the information, the learning that you provide to people, there's no barrier on that. You want to be able to have that impact and to help as many people as possible. And time is limited. There's only so many people that you can see. So platforms like this podcast and Creative Mornings, there's an opportunity to be able to connect people to some of this thinking. And you made a book that starts to share some of your thinking, but I thought it would be great if you would be willing to share a little bit about the process of that book and what it represents to our audience here.
Thank you. I don't think of it as a book. I think of it as a set of cards, and then the book's a bit of an instruction. So it's really weird when people say, she's an author, and I go, I feel like a fraud when you say that. Serious Life Play came about because I actually wanted to work less, but I wanted to have greater impact, and so leverage is definitely a thing. I probably wasn't in a life phase to sit and write a book, but I definitely had so many hundreds of life hacks going around in my head that I wanted to share, that I think it was in COVID, lockdown was the perfect time, and I actually had the motivation of my granddaughter being born, and I realised, it makes me a bit teary, but you sort of think you never ever get the opportunity to share all the things that really, really matter to you and the things that you've learned in life that have been helpful. And I thought, I can actually do that. If I create an artefact, it's not only leveraging what I know for lots of strangers, it's also like a legacy piece for them. And so it was the best fun. It was the most weird situation. I wanted to go to Hungry Workshop to see, to feel the letterpress and all that. I couldn't do anything. I was stuck in my studio. But the process was amazing because I had to. I went to Jack, Jacinta Lippold from Jack and she was great. She said, I think you need some help with the crafting of this artefact, because I tend to be a person that I can do this. I'm a creative. I can do all this. I'm good. And she was great because she intercepted and said, and somebody else could make it better. So I got a copywriter who I work with, Crystal Fong from Apostrophe, and she took me through an amazing process of eliciting the most important information. Because as we know, when you have a certain constraint, like with all creativity, constraint is the master of creativity. So it was great for them to ask me questions and elicit, if you could only tell people 6 things, what would they be? So I have folders and folders and folders of all the rest of the stuff I'd like to share, but that's a distillation of the most often used strategies that I use with all clients. Did I answer the question?
So then it sounds like you have another artefact in you.
Yeah, I think I'd like to do a workbook because in my experience, Serious Life Play is a beautiful artefact. I adore it. And I also think people are scared to open it and dive into it because it's very beautiful. And so being the person that writes all over books, I write all over books. I'm a voracious reader, and I consume, and I read because I want to teach what I read. That's my mode of reading. So I want people to spread the cards out. I want them to take them away on weekends. I want people to have these deep and meaningful conversations. Not everybody does, but those people who have bought it and have done the exercises have come back to me and said, that changed my relationship with my family. That's an unintended side effect. But the first chapter is unpack yourself, and it's a way of understanding how you came to be who you are through your family of origin. And I had one girl say, I had the worst relationship with my brother, but this actually changed it. And so one person, one life change, that's a pretty good score.
So we're at Creative Mornings. We host a podcast called Creative or Dead. I would love to know, what is your understanding of, or your take on creativity? Who gets to be creative? What is creativity?
Well, I think everybody gets to be creative. I don't think there's anything you do in life that isn't creative. So you are creating your reality constantly. You are creating artifacts, or you're creating a world or an environment. So for me, creativity is problem solving. And hopefully it's fun. Often creativity isn't in an environment of fun because problem solving isn't always easy. But I think if you commit to apply your creative thinking and you hone your creative skills, creative thinking skills, you can solve pretty amazing problems. And whether it be a beautiful font and making the world a more beautiful place by some aesthetic, or changing a system, or changing an industry, or changing the way we think, creativity is everywhere. And we're all creative.
Couldn't agree more. Do you have any more questions?
No, how are we for time?
I think we've got a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'll go. So we talked a little bit about this and somehow end up going down this pathway each time. That idea of the end and designing the end, I know you've got some thoughts on this, but I think we agree, maybe I'll give us a kick-off point, that we as a society aren't really great at doing death at the moment in this particular country at this particular time for a whole heap of reasons. But do you see opportunity to design the process of dying and end of life better?
Oh, definitely. I think that's a huge growth industry. In terms of an opportunity, knowing that the generations after mine are going to want a totally different experience of death. I want a different experience of the death that I've experienced, with relatives and parents dying. So, the thought that it's a celebration of life, that's a bit of a catchphrase. I don't think we lived that yet. But just rethinking our relationship to death on a personal level is where it starts, and understanding that life is finite. And I think facing our own mortality is a part of it. And then imagining, how do we want it to be? What do we want our legacy to be? What do we want death to look, sound and feel like for the people that we leave behind? I sort of love the thought of being a part of your own farewell. It's sort of like, crafting your own farewell, your own playlist, all that sort of thing, and embracing it as a very natural part of life. I don't want to die anytime soon. I actually genuinely want to see my grandchildren grow up. And so I'm here for a while. But I do constantly play in the place of life and death. I've lost really, really close friends unexpectedly, and then over protracted illness. It's very confronting and a reality check to know that at any minute it can all be gone. So make the most of the minutes, and also plan for how you want to celebrate if you get the opportunity to live a long and fulfilled life.
And do the tools that you help others with, and that I know as you've shared you apply to yourself and have applied to yourself, do they shape the way that you think about that at end of life? Do they shape your activity in the moment? Are you constantly kind of applying that to yourself?
Yeah, I suppose inherently, because I've practiced it a lot, I am always thinking about mitigating potential future regret. So when I'm at a crossroads or I'm making decisions, I think about the big game. So, do I go to this event or not, this family event or not? What would be the long-range ramifications if I don't? Because sometimes I can feel like I'm lazy. And then I think, but it could change one person's life, or I could have one really great opportunity for a conversation. So that will be the impetus. And so, always living like today's my last, but planning like I have forever. That's my mantra.
That long view does seem to, ironically, it delivers more presence in the moment.
Yeah, actually, it's the perfect way of putting it. Yeah.
And do you think we come back maybe full circle to Bucky's book that you mentioned at the start, and that idea of, I've seen you share the starfish story a few times, which, for those who may not be aware, the person walking down the beach sees a young child. The beach is covered in starfish that have been beached and are slowly dying out of the water, and this young child is walking along, picking up starfish, throwing them into the water. And the person says, "What are you doing? Look at all these starfish. You can't possibly make a difference." And as the child picks up the next starfish and throws it in, says, "I made a difference to that one." So that sense of doing what you can do where you're at that time feels like it's a bit of a common theme to everything you've talked about with us this morning.
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody has the capacity to make a really positive difference, if only on the person next to you or the person that you share your day with. But each of those small differences has a ripple effect. And so the ripple effect, I'm really conscious always of what's my ripple effect. But start with the person next to me.
Absolutely. Well, that's creativity and death. Anything else?
If there was one thing that you wanted everyone to leave today, what would it be? I think we spoke about outcomes, and you've given some amazing golden nuggets. But is there one thing that you would love everyone to go away thinking about?
One thing. I think that getting to know yourself is probably the best gift you can give yourself. So self-reflection, asking yourself really hard questions and getting to understand what matters most to you, not to the people around you, but to you, and learning how to act from a place of integrity in your own beliefs and values is probably the greatest gift you can give yourself. And understanding, I have to say this, understanding how you think, so your thinking style, which is a part of my training in NLP, can be liberating. To understand that how we think is totally different to the person next to us sets you free. It's liberating. So the takeaway is get to know yourself.
Some great advice. Well, thank you so much, Jo. And thank you to everyone for coming and spending your morning with us. I hope you got a lot out of that. I know I did. We would like to thank Sally from the Melbourne chapter of Creative Mornings for making this happen. Thank you. And of course to Tom's Place for hosting us. It's a beautiful venue here. Feel nice and cozy. Thank you to everyone.
Wonderful.